Hey YouTube, Booth Dog is here again. It's Friday, so I think what I'm going to start doing will bring back College Friday a little more formally. Of course, you can ask me any questions you have in your Google Meet, but I think I'll start each Friday's video with a little, I don't know, piece of advice or story from my college days. Today, just, it's the beginning of April, so seniors, if you haven't chosen a college yet, if you are planning to go to college, then you do only have about a month left to do that. So I thought I'd offer a little advice as far as doing that. I know my advice in the past, or at least in my experience, as I've explained, was that visiting these different colleges really helped me decide what I wanted to, or where I wanted to go, what I wanted to choose. That's not really an option for you right now, and there's nothing we can do about it. So I think there's still a lot of ways for you to do some research on this, for you to talk to people you know who've gone to these schools, for you to research how this school that you're looking at has reacted to this entire situation. I think it says a lot about a school and how supportive they are of their student body, based on the decisions that they've made in the last few weeks. So I think that's definitely an important consideration to make. Otherwise, it's kind of back to the same questions that I've been telling you to ask yourself all year. How much financial aid are you getting? How much debt are you willing to go into? If it's a few $1,000s for a fantastic school, that's worth it to me. I mean, that's what I did. I can't speak to each person's individual situation, but if it's only a little bit of money in the long run, I know a few $1,000s seems like a lot, but over the course of your life, it's really not. At least personally. Each situation's different. And of course, if you're thinking, God, I'm going to go $100,000 into debt for this school, that's a whole other situation. Okay, so even more to think about and to research and talk to people about. Okay, so again, I can only speak from my personal experience. Certainly not right for everybody, but it's helpful to hear these different stories. Okay, so that's my bit of advice for this week as you are looking at what school to attend. That deadline's coming up pretty soon. Reach out to me with any other questions. Otherwise, we'll bring Mr. Boothman on and get started with today's lesson. Good morning, happy Friday. All right, so today we'll go through the major concepts from our second semester study of calculus. Your exit ticket today will be to submit any major questions you have from this second semester after reviewing all of your notes, of course. That'll be due by midnight tonight as usual. On Monday, I will share more information about how retakes and problem set corrections will work, as well as what your final will look like and what your major review assignments are going to be in the coming weeks. Okay, so all of that is coming, don't worry. Let's jump into semester 2. Okay, so we started this semester by looking at Unit 6. Unit 6 was accumulation of change. Last semester was all about talking about change. So how can we model change? How can we describe change? Specifically, instantaneous change. Okay, so this semester was looking at not just an instantaneous rate of change, but rather what happens as that change accumulates. Okay, so we realized by starting with some simple examples that the area under a rate curve gives us this amount of change. Okay, so we looked at different ways of calculating this area under a curve. I'm talking about LRAM, RRAM, MRAM, trapezoidal rule. And then we realized that the more rectangles or trapezoids that we're using, the more accurate this area approximation becomes. Okay, and so we decided to use some new notation for this, as we take an infinite number of these rectangles, and we called that the integral. Okay, so we started by looking at definite integrals. We're going from one x value to another. We started just by calculating those by hand as areas, but for any function, once we made the connection using the fundamental theorem of calculus that the derivative and the integral are inverse operations, then calculating the integral for any complicated function is as simple as taking its antiderivative. So 6.3, perhaps the most important section of the year, and then 6.4, sometimes our integrals get a little more difficult, and so we looked at this U substitution method for evaluating those integrals. Unit 7 was basically, I don't want to say the same thing, but it was very related. So we were looking at differential equations. How do we solve equations that involve a derivative? Okay, we call these differential equations, diff(q) for short, and we take an antiderivative. Okay. 7.2, incredibly important. If I were to hazard a guess, I would say that one of your AP questions this year will be based on 7.2. Separable differential equations. That's where we need to separate our variables, x and y, on opposite sides of our equation so that we can take an antiderivative of both sides. Finally, Unit 8. So this is our most recent unit, what you just took your exam on. Applications of integration. So just like we can use the instantaneous rate of change to solve real-world problems, to solve, even if they're not real-world problems, just interesting mathematical problems, we can do the same thing with integrals. 8.1 looked at accumulated change, so looking back at motion, and we have different rates of something going in and going out, and how can we use this to find the amount of something, the amount of change? That's the integral. Okay. 8.2 looked at area between curves, integral of the top function minus the bottom function, and then 8.3, of course, was our solids and volume, specifically volume of solids of revolution. Remember that this unit, Unit 8, will not be tested on the AP exam this year. That does not mean that it will not appear on your final in some way. Again, I'll talk more about what your final is going to look like next week, but don't worry about this unit nearly as much at all for the AP exam specifically. All right, so next week we'll begin those major review assignments and activities. Okay, we've learned a lot this year. I'm sure there's a lot that you need to go back and study. So our next few weeks will focus on doing just that. We'll go through a plethora of FRQs, and hopefully it'll start to jog your memory. Otherwise, I need you to be reviewing on your own. Hopefully my review assignments starting next week will help with that as well. Your exit ticket will be due by midnight tonight. Otherwise, reach out if you have any questions. Have a good day. Thanks, Mr. Boothman, and I'll see all of you tomorrow. Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out.